Hello and welcome to another session of Karen's Colours. I'm Dr. Karen and these are my colour conversations. In this session, we're going to be examining the colour orange. It's a very ancient colour, been around since Neolithic times, but it didn't actually get its name until fairly recently in terms of geological history in the world. So let's have a little foray into it. But I shan't be going into it in any great depth because that would take forever to complete. And I know that you probably wouldn't want to sit through a video of several hours. Before we begin though, I'd like to once again welcome those of you who've been following this series of videos. Thank you very much for your interest. It's great to feel as though somebody actually wants to know what I am able to present to you. If you're new to this channel, you are doubly welcome. Certainly make yourself at home, grab a cup of something or other, and enjoy what is to follow. So let's get started. Orange, a very ancient colour, but a fairly modern basic colour term. An overview of what we're looking at today. Firstly, I'll be examining the features of the colour quite briefly, and then we'll go into a bit of a lengthy session on the history of the colour orange. Then we'll look at it as it emerged as a basic colour term, and then examine some of the cultural issues that arise as a result of its usage across the world. This will also be a bit of an overview. I don't have the time or the space here, nor do I think do you have the inclination to listen to every time that the colour orange becomes important in a culture. And then finally, we're going to have a look at some of the effects of orange on individuals, whether they be positive, negative, or even neutral effects. Firstly, the features of orange. It has a wide range of tones. It transitions between yellow and red on the colour spectrum, and orange is somewhere in the middle. We usually see it further towards the red side of the spectrum, but it does impinge all the way through to yellow. But it also has some brown and pink variations. That is, it can start off with pink and end up in brown, with orange being the transition colour in the meantime. It was popular long before it was named, and there are many different varieties of orange. They are warm and inviting, or they can be harsh and irritating. They can be friendly as background colours. They can also be colours that people find extremely irritating and don't actually like. It is one of the colours that is least liked, although if you look back at the video I did on Orange is the Great Survivor, we find that when people describe themselves in colour terms as a strength, orange is the third most popular colour. So it shows something is important about this colour. In terms of history, orange was a pigment long before any other colour was described. And if we look back at Neolithic cave paintings, we can see that orange was used extensively on the hides of the animals that were depicted there, and it shows strength and vitality. But as we became more civilized, we started to look for sources of the colour orange. The first of these was a pigment created from crushing the stone called orpiment. Now, orpiment is quite toxic. It breaks down to an arsenical type of compound, which when absorbed through the skin or inhaled through the lungs, will eventually kill a person due to arsenic poisoning. But nevertheless, the orange was considered to be important because it demonstrated a degree of vitality and passion, and it embodied transformation. It was also associated with fire, which is both to do with destruction and regeneration. A second crystal known as realgar, or ruby of arsenic because of the way that the crystals form, was also considered by many cultures in early times to be a powerful talisman against evil spirits. It eliminates negative energy, so it was believed, and therefore was highly prized. But again, it was basically an arsenic product. And again, people who used it, inhaled it, had the fine powder rubbed onto their skin for any period of time, would die of arsenic poisoning. A third crystal that has similar properties was lead antimonite, or also known as stibnite. Now, this is the same substance from which lead is produced, but when it is treated by heat, it also produces a fine orange-coloured powder, and that was used by the ancients also in their decorations. Interestingly enough, this particular mineral was also linked to gold deposits, so it was a byproduct of finding gold, which of course is another almost orangey-coloured element that is highly prized and has been for generations. Then, of course, we had a number of pigment sources that came from vegetation. The first of these, and probably the most precious, was saffron. But turmeric also has the ability to dye objects orange, as does mustard. All three of these plants are used as dyes and in medicine and also in cooking because they are non-toxic in small doses. But regardless of how orange was used by early civilizations, it certainly made a great impression. In China, which was the source of most of the minerals that were used in the Western world, stibnite was used for fireworks. Its powder was highly flammable and created colour from the inclusion in a firework display. It's still used to some extent today. Realga, on the other hand, was used to repel snakes. And again, this is something that is still sold as a product. It's believed to keep snakes at bay. I'm not sure how effective it is, but it is quite a thriving industry. In Mesopotamia or Persia, the orange pigments ground from those minerals was used in building decorations and images for worship. It was also used as dyes for fabric, and it was dedicated very much to the early gods. In Egypt, it was used for tomb decoration, and particularly for the painting of figures, which were often portrayed as being orange-bodied people. It was also used for clothing and other decorations for those that were still living. In Greece, once again, it was used for clothing, but also for paintings on walls. Realga was also used as a medication. This came from India, which is another source of the mineral, and as such, it was highly prized, but it was also, because it was associated with arsenic, extremely dangerous to use. And from Greece, we actually have our very first description of someone dying from arsenic poisoning. In Rome, it was also used for paint pigments and as house decorations. In later European history, orange pigments were used in illuminated manuscripts as a substitute for red, which often faded, but also as a substitute for gold, because a very pale orange would give the impression of gold without having to use that precious metal on those manuscripts. One of the features of this orange crystal was the attempts to transmute lead into gold, particularly since we already know that lead, when treated by heat, will often produce an orange-coloured substance. And as such, it was considered if lead could turn orange, then maybe lead could also turn into gold. Of course, we know that that is ridiculous these days, but it was a very strong belief in medieval times. During the Renaissance, the warmth and depth of the colour orange was a very favoured item for painting, particularly if it was to paint somebody of importance. By the 18th and 19th centuries, the discovery of lead chromate, also known as crocoate, was also a way of creating a different type of orange pigment. This led to the development of something known as chrome orange, and that chrome orange and other synthetic colours that came as a result of the chemistry of these was used liberally by Renaissance artists, and this particular painting is quite famous for the lushness of the orange that was used in it. So how then did orange become a basic colour term? Well, it didn't actually have a name as such until the 16th century. Prior to that, it was given a name that was associated either with yellow or with red because it contained both of those colours. But the first written records that produced orange as an English word came from a statute on the manufacture and sale of woolen cloth that dated from 1557 and 1558. By that stage, the colour orange was already being named after this magnificent fruit that had been imported from overseas in the Americas. The ripe fruit itself was considered to be an epitome of the colour orange, and because many different sounds that were similar to the word orange were already being used on the continent in Europe itself, the word in English then became the primary one that was used across the world. Interestingly, orange is the only colour in the visible light spectrum that is actually based on an object. Most basic colour terms are words that were created simply for the effect of the colour itself, but orange was actually a word created for the object that it described. Orange was also very important in Eastern religions. For Hinduism, it was considered to be sacred, very spiritual, and indicated some form of soul transformation, representing fire, purity, change, and it was a key colour in the festivals of Diwali, Navratri, and also Holi, in which all of these good was considered to triumph over evil, the world was being renewed, and there was a great deal of joy at the start of a new venture into the future. For Buddhists too, orange was considered to be highly prized because it represented happiness, love, good health, and courage. It was used extensively for celebrations and decorations for the Chinese New Year, and it was considered to bring good fortune and well-being. It was also worn by monks of the Buddhist faith across the Eastern world to indicate a fair degree of humility and adherence to a simple life. In Japan, it is the colour that is associated mostly with the Shinto practices. Now, Shinto isn't actually a religion as such, but certainly orange features greatly as part of the meditative process in which you either walk into a temple or along the corridor as you walk towards the sacred parts of the temple, as shown in this image here. In Europe, orange is also a very important colour. In the Netherlands, for example, it is the national colour of the Dutch royal family. And in fact, orange was considered to be the colour associated with Protestantism. In the Ukraine, it denotes strength and bravery and was the colour adopted by the revolutionaries of the early 21st century as they got rid of their communistic rule and became democratic. Carnival in Venice also uses orange liberally in their costuming, particularly the masquerades that they have, as in Brazil, where orange, yellow, and red feature prominently in their Mardi Gras. Now, this celebration comes from Portuguese colonialism, and of course the Portuguese were Catholic, and orange was associated with that colour. In Trinidad, in South Americas, it was also used liberally as a colour for masquerade. And just as the Brazilian festivities arose from Portuguese colonialism, here in Trinidad, masquerade came from French colonialism. It's interesting to note, though, that the colours used to denote happiness, brightness, renewal, and all of those things associated with the warmth of orange are the same across both cultures. In the United Kingdom, orange is used as a political and social movement indicator, and in fact it has been accepted as the symbol of the Liberal Democrats. In Ireland, for example, it becomes part of their national flag, whereas Protestantism is considered to be the orange part, Catholicism the green, and the white in the middle of the flag is the meeting of the two with no affiliations whatsoever. In St. Patrick's Day, unlike the rest of the world where green is the colour associated with it, in Ireland itself they wear both green and orange to celebrate that particular festival. In the United States, of course, orange is mostly associated with Halloween. And in that festival, its association with orange comes not through the orange fruit, but through the use of carved pumpkins. Orange is also used as a colour of prison uniforms. This is because it's highly visible, but also it makes the person easily identifiable as someone should they escape. In Australia, orange clothing has been adopted by various trades as the safety colour. In fact, it is recommended as the uniform for all those people that we call tradies here in Australia. It also is the uniform associated with emergency workers. And again, it has to do with high visibility, the ability of people who are not part of those rescue workers to recognise who is in charge and who is capable and trained to undertake the rescue process. So let's now move on to the positive effects of orange. Firstly, it stimulates the senses. It can boost energy levels and metabolism, and it encourages socialization. As such, it grabs attention and is able to create a sense of excitement. Orange that is seen as a colour of optimism, adventure and confidence allows people to feel as though they are in charge of their environment and their activities. It can evoke feelings of enthusiasm and it inspires creativity. It also promotes collaboration and innovation. But it also has some negative effects. Too much orange can be overwhelming. It's perceived as frivolous or immature if it's used too much. It can also be abrasive and insensitive when viewed in excess. It promotes exhibitionism. It's superficial. It shows someone who is impatient, and it indicates domination. It can add tension if you feel that time is passing too slowly, which of course is one of the reasons why it is used in the USA for prison uniforms. But it also can create a sense of frustration and annoyance, especially if there is a need to focus or remain calm within a situation. Its connection to danger and incarceration can also be seen as a very negative association. There are also neutral effects of orange on people, and it's neutral because the effect is the same regardless of whether it is perceived as either positive or negative in its outcomes. For example, it stimulates appetite, and for that reason it's used in kitchen decor and restaurants and also by fast food companies to entice people to come and eat. But it can also trigger food cravings and the sense of overeating. Orange increases energy levels, which can ignite motivation and make someone decide to do something that they otherwise probably would not have attempted. But that also can be turned into restlessness and the inability to wait for the appropriate time for something to happen. It can push people out of their comfort zone, and while that can provide courage for people to face their fears, it can also induce risk-taking, and in that risk-taking, they can suffer from negative consequences. It can uplift otherwise fallen spirits, which means that it can be used to dissipate depression, but it also can create a false sense of security, and that in itself can be quite dangerous. So in summary, what have we learned about the colour orange? Well, it's been useful to people for millennia, mainly in the form of something that is available to decorate either walls, art, or clothing. It wasn't formally named until the 16th century, and The consensus was that it was named after the fruit that bore that color as its right form. It's useful for very many varied cultural purposes, and it can affect people in both positive or negative ways. Individual responses to orange stimulation will determine the sort of actions that a person will undertake, be those positive and helpful or negative and destructive. And there we have it, a short foray into the color orange. I'll be delving into the symbolism and the individual notification of what orange means for people when I look at the orange personality, which is a video further down the track. I hope you'll stick around for that one. In the meantime, I hope that you have lots of color in your life. And if you're one of those people who likes the color orange, may it bring you joy and happiness and the courage to face whatever the future brings to you. Until next time, bye.